Yes, good evening, everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about a subject that's been controversial as long as photography is in existence, and that is judging. So to start off with, let's first list all the rules in photography. So from the audience, just let us have all the rules. I hear somebody say there's no rules. Well, you're correct, there's no rules. But let's see if you are correct. There are only good pictures and then also not so good pictures. But let's first look at some fundamentals. There will always those who look at technique, who ask how, while others are more curious about why. The other point is judging will always be subjective. The trick is to be as objective as possible in this subjective world. Man Ray said, I've always preferred inspiration to information. The main thing I'm going to touch on for tonight is club judging. So what is a club? It's sharing and learning. So listen and take the advice that is offered. Club judging, the task of the club judge is appraisal, it's teaching, to give modest advice on how you think the photograph can be improved. But remember, to judge is a big responsibility. A question again to the audience, did your photographic technique improve since you joined the club? I really hope so. And then the seventh point, we are all judges, even if we only judge the judges. You also start by assessing your own work, and the question is how objective are you when you look at your own photography. There's quite a number of cliches I'm going to focus on for this talk. The subject in the middle, negative space, the wrong time of day, even or uneven numbers, you can't see the face, personal likes and dislikes, not all images require cropping, not all images require a border, and then also unfit borders. And monophotographs must have from pure white to pure black. What is judging about? It's looking for the message that a picture is trying to convey. It's analyzing the picture content and the treatment. It is considering the technical aspects delivered in a constructive package. It is not about promoting your own ideas, neither being overcritical or negative, in other words, looking for faults or for something that's wrong. You as the judge will often be judged and criticized. Be clear, be honest, be consistent in your judgment and comments. It is true that a good photograph starts with the technical aspects. Larry Wilder said photography is all about light, composition and emotion. So we need correct exposure, correct sharpness, correct color and tonal balance, and that's for mono as well as color images. It needs to be well composed, and then care needs to be given to processing. That includes noise, halos, chromatic aberration, and oversaturation. So good judging is we do not pass judgment, we appraise, we assess and analyze. Judging should be evaluative, not critical. So be helpful, be fair, and be informed. A question to everybody, how often do I look at pictures other than my own? Do I read books? Do I visit exhibitions? Do I search the internet? It is quite important. You need to be interesting, you need to be unbiased, and you also need to be a good time manager. Positive comments, be constructive, friendly, respectful, don't waffle, admit if you don't know. You must enjoy judging. Try not to lecture and don't make assumptions. You will most likely be wrong. And judge what you see. The art of making a photograph is less a question of what is being looked at than how. That's Margaret Atwood. Keep an open mind. Don't compare or be prejudiced by what you have seen before. Be helpful, encourage, and develop high standards of photography. Promote photography as a pleasure. Other people's work is a joy to behold. The message of the photograph is all important. It might be that the photographer got it right and you as judge failed to read the message, or vice versa. The judge, however, has the final decision. After all, you as judge have been asked to give your opinion. But remember, as I've already said, judging is a huge responsibility. So the challenge, apply your mind for the correct advice and express yourself correctly. And this last point may be one of the most difficult, is to express yourself correctly. And that's why over years we have got all these cliches that I've referred to earlier. So let's look at a few of the technical aspects. In this photograph, the driver inside the car is more or less correctly exposed, but the rest of the photograph is completely overexposed. So from a technical point of view, this photograph is not successful. We've got the movement, the action, everything, but technically it fails. Similar in this one, the subject is more or less correctly lit, but the background, very overpowering, very dark areas in the branch, which is now, on the other hand, underexposed. This photograph, very high contrast, too high, in fact. There's burnt out areas all over. There's areas with no detail at all. And you don't always need the detail everywhere, but in this case, I think that the contrast is just a bit too high. The next element on the technical side is correct sharpness. Now there's action and everything, but unfortunately the shutter speed in this case not correct. The background, the tires nicely in focus, but the main subjects not sharp enough. So this image I believe is not successful. On the other hand, when we do macro, because of the shallow depth of field, everything can't be in focus. So the subject, sharp and in focus, the flowers out of focus, but that's because of a lack of depth of field, which is the case in many of our macro photographs. So you can't shoot the picture down for that, or tell the photographer that unfortunately that's not in focus. That's not the correct comment. So this is correctly in focus, or the sharpness is correct. If it's a good image, that's a different debate. In this photograph, there's nothing sharp. But is this the correct sharpness? I personally believe that this is the correct sharpness, because the photographer convey a specific message with the movement. It's on the arty side. So you can't say because nothing is in focus, the picture doesn't succeed. Noise, one of the other technical things. There's a lot of noise in the background. Unfortunately, there's even a lot of noise on the model, even over there, which in this case I believe is distracting. So the picture in that sense not successful. A lot of noise in the sky. So in the processing, the contrast was pushed too much. Get the noise in the background, and for that reason, although the image has got high impact, now you must decide, is that strong enough to carry the picture through, or is that bad enough to pull the picture down? Again, an image with a few faults, a lot of noise in the background, halos because it was selectively processed, trying to get some detail, and the color balance in this photograph is off. And then normal processing, an image badly processed, look at all the halos, again a lot of noise. I tried to do this again, and I think it's much more successful and a much more pleasing photograph to look at. So that's as far as the technical aspects is concerned. So let's look at some of the cliches that I mentioned earlier. That the subject can't be in the middle. Now this is how the image has been presented. The advice was to crop it just ever so slightly, and I think in this case that was good advice. But in these two images, do you feel that we need to crop these images to get the subjects out of the middle? I don't believe so. I think if you crop anything from any of these two, you will ruin the image. So the subject can be in the middle. It must just be appropriate for the specific photo that you took. As well as in this case, there's enough action. We've got the splash, it's got nice mood, it conveys the atmosphere, the scene. So I personally believe you don't need to get this tail out of the middle of the photograph. An example where I personally believe that a little cropping can enhance this photograph, and it's not because of the fact that the subject's in the middle. I just feel that it's stronger when cropped just a little bit. So look at each picture individually. Don't make a comment that the picture doesn't succeed because the subject's in the middle. The reason is most likely something else. So a subject can be in the middle. The next cliche is negative space. There's a saying which I read that the guy said that negative space can be a very handsome tool, but using it wrongly can be very naive. So in this case, I think that the negative space has been used quite well. And I don't think that cropping will even in any way improve this photograph. And similar in this one, it gives the environment, it gives a nice atmosphere, because this image is not about the bird on its own, it's about this whole image. And a question to the audience, how many of you feel that this image should be cropped? I mean, there's a lot of negative space. Personally, I don't think that it needs cropping. The only reason why I crop this image is because of a detracting subject, just to crop it, because it's about the action, what happened there. Maybe I cropped it a little bit too much, the subject in the middle, which is not wrong, but to include a bit more of the feathers that was left behind might still improve this image even further. Again, an image with nice mood, telling a story, a wider angle, again a lot of negative space. This doesn't have much in negative space. I just included this to illustrate that in this case it was clever to include this guy. It's about this man. Without that, I think it would have been less successful. So clever use of a subject to balance the main subject in this specific photograph. The other cliche, even or uneven numbers. Immediately when this photograph comes up, a number of judges will count and say, it's a pity that there's two. I believe that the two is not the problem. It's because of the fact that there's not real interaction between the two birds. And this might make this a little bit less successful. The next one, they're looking in the same direction, they're looking at something. It's less detracting that there's only two. Now I've got a few examples of images where there's only two subjects. And I can promise you none of you would have counted and said there's only two because there's interaction. I mean, there's two zebra in this one, there's two lion in this one. Does it matter that there's only two? There's only two birds in this one. Does it matter that there's only two? So to go and count the number of subjects is the wrong way to go about. The question is the image successful? Because of different things, interaction, balance, and so forth. The next cliche, you must be able to see the face. I don't think it's necessary to see more of the face of this ballerina. There's specific composition. There might be other technical faults, but the fault is not the fact that you can't see the face. In this image, for instance, I would prefer to have seen the face. The effort would have enhanced this photograph, so it's a different matter. So there's no rule. As I've said, it's a cliche. So evaluate every image on its own merit. Another image where I believe that it's really not necessary to see the face. This is again an image with a specific mood, telling a specific story. And similarly in this case, an image with the girl, you can't see the girl's face. There's a lot of negative space, but for me, this image is successful. Another one where you can't see the face. But the whole posture of this man, the atmosphere tells a specific story of hardship. He's tired. The lighting makes this photograph. The other cliche that you can't photograph somebody else's art. With all due respect, I believe that every time we press the shutter, we are photographing somebody else's art in different forms and different ways. The question is this image successful? And although I don't like the wording of what I'm going to say, it's a cliche again. This is sort of only a record shot. It's a photograph of something with no good composition, no specific lighting, and for that reason, the image is not successful. It's not about the fact that it's somebody else's art. I mean, this is an example of, I believe, somebody else's art. This person loves gardening, making his place nice to look at. So is this wrong to photograph somebody else's art? He used the colors, he used a different angle, and in a great sense, this photograph, I believe, is successful. This lighthouse, an architect designed this, so it's somebody else's art. If it's a successful image, that's another question. But you can't shoot an image down, and there's nothing to say you're not allowed to photograph somebody else's art. Again, these hats, somebody else's art. His job is to make hats. There's even a piece of art on the wall. In this case, giving a nice balance to this photograph. So nothing wrong or illegal to photograph somebody else's art. What does the image tell you? Is the image successful, yes or no? And not all images need cropping. Often judges throughout an evening want every image to be cropped. This specific image, I believe, needed cropping, so I cropped it down there. For me, it's stronger as presented at the bottom. Same in this case, I just got rid of some of the distracting areas. Maybe I cropped it a little bit too tight. The rock actually gives a nice balance, tell a different story to this image. And then in this case also, I think that is distracting, so this image needed cropping. This image was presented like at the top one. The advice was given to crop it. I cropped it for this presentation. I believe that the top image as presented is much stronger. It gives the vastness, it's got more impact, So I don't believe that that image needed cropping. Another example, the top one was as presented. The comments was that it's too busy. I don't agree with that, and I'm not having a go at judges, I'm trying to convey a message. This guy is looking that way, that guy is looking that way. They're in a race, the competition is on. You lose a lot of the impact, I believe, when you crop that away. Another image which I believe don't need any more cropping, although we have got not a lot of negative space. What one has to be careful for is to crop too tightly. For me, this is a little bit on the cramped side. It must still look comfortable. So just be aware of that as well. Okay, and then a square crop. For many judges, that's a personal thing that they don't like square crops. I think that in many cases a square crop can work, like in the few examples that I've got in this presentation. I mean, this image break all the so-called rules. It's square crop, the subject's in the middle, but I believe this is a very successful image. Okay, and then borders. I really believe that not all images need borders. So commenting on borders, if it's not really necessary, we should refrain from that. An image with light edges don't need to have a border, a specific border. An image where there's really dark areas where you can't see where this image ends, I believe need a border. But inappropriate borders is as dangerous as maybe not having a border. So some advice is that you pick a color in the image and use that as a border. I do believe that in this specific case and many other of the cases, it's actually not enhancing the picture, it's detracting from it. So just a light border, just the edge of the image, I believe is the right way to go. One of my pet hate cliches is people telling photographers that it's a pity that that photograph was taken at the wrong time of day. It's not the right way to express an image that's not that successful. This image was taken around about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This one was taken slap bang 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And this one of the same spot was taken 7 o'clock just after sunrise. And I really believe that the previous image, 12 o'clock slap bang in the middle of the day, is a much better image than this one. So the comment should be, you should talk about the light conditions. You should not talk about the time of day, because that's inappropriate. The time of day has got nothing to do with it. And even an image with this, with high contrast, maybe not everything is technically correct. This is telling a huge story. The photographer captured a moment of this disabled child putting in effort. He tells a strong story. Also, harsh light conditions, but I still believe in its own right a successful photograph. Then the other cliche, another cliche, the horizon in the middle. This image is not successful because of the fact that the horizon is in the middle. So to make a comment about that is not appropriate or applicable. There's other issues, like the image might be too busy, and some other aspects. There's not a strong enough composition. So don't even comment on the horizon that's in the middle. There's a horizon straight in the middle. I believe it's a successful photograph, and as well as in this case. The other cliche is about black and white. I prefer to talk about the tonal range. Where it's applicable that you have whites or bright areas and blacks and dark areas, you can talk about from black to white, but that's not the case all the time. In this case, you've also got the whites. So do you have detail in the whites? Do you have detail in the blacks? Do you have the full tonal range? In other words, is the mono conversion successful? It's not muddy, it's crisp, it's correctly processed. There's an image with virtually no whites in it. There's a lot of too dark areas. It's very black, but I believe an image with high impact and a really successful image. This image I got from Facebook, just also to maybe give a message that once you've posted something on Facebook, it's in the public domain, you can use it. In this case, maybe a little bit of grain, but I think it adds to the mood. An image without the full tonal range from white to black, there's a little bit of black in the writing on the boat, but on the other hand, it's almost monotone. But I think it's successful because the tonal range that was available in this photograph, that's been portrayed correctly. And it's got a nice mood, as also in this specific photograph. Okay, so let's conclude. Very important, use the full scoring system. When you score out of 15, we normally start at 7. A 6 will be a disqualification in most systems. So use all 9 points from 7 to 15. Some judges find it hard to score below an 8 or below a 9, and some find it hard to score above a 12. When you use the 5 scoring system, don't be afraid to go down to a 2 if the picture deserves, in inverted commas, to have a 2. And don't be afraid to give a 5 when the photograph deserves the 5. As I've already said, don't look for faults, but I can't stress this enough. And judge what you see. What was your first impression of that photograph when it appeared on the screen? Be consistent. If you're strict tonight, then be strict throughout. If you're lenient, be lenient throughout. So be consistent and be fair. And club judging, all important. Constructive comment. Express yourself correctly. So happy judging.